Today I'm going to talk about one of our apps, which is the Org Chart app. Just a brief overview on QuizCom. We've been developing add-ons and add-ons for start since 2005. Today we have many add-ons and apps for almost any gap in SharePoint and SharePoint Online. The main concept that we always kept is develop small plugins, small apps that solve specific issues or overcome specific gaps, so that customer will be able to deploy them quite easily because they're small and also more pocket friendly. You can find most of our apps on the Microsoft App Store, except the recent ones, and the Org Chart is one of them, which are based on the Microsoft on the SharePoint framework, SPFx. Up until now, you cannot host SPFx add-ins in the Microsoft App Store. This is a limitation, so only way to get them is to go to our website and download the app file from there. One more thing before I show the Org Chart app is one thing that I'd like to emphasize regarding all of our apps. As you probably know, you have two types of SharePoint Online apps. You have the SharePoint hosted apps and vendor hosted apps. Vendor hosted apps are usually used when you need to run some server-side code, and of course you cannot run this server-side code on SharePoint Online, so a vendor that has some server-side code needs to run it on its own cloud server, which means that some of your data might go to this cloud server for processing and then get back to your tenant. A key decision that we made several years ago is that all of our apps are SharePoint hosted apps, which means all of the apps are running only on the client side. It's a pure client side code. Nothing goes out from our apps to a cloud server of ours. All the data always remains in the end user tenant, and this is a key decision that we made, and all our apps support it. Okay, let's start with the Org Chart app. So the Org Chart app actually is a part of a family of apps which is called DataView toolset. It's all based on the new SPFx, and this family includes several web parts. All these web parts can connect to many types of data sources and display these data sources in many types of display controls. For example, the QuizCom aggregator can connect to SharePoint List, to SharePoint Search, to Graph API, and aggregate information from several sources. So for example, if you want to aggregate all your delayed tasks from all your project sites, you can use the aggregator. Now, on top of all these web parts, we have the QuizCom DataView Plus, which is actually a bundle of all these web parts, all of them in one app. And this is customers would like to maybe to get this one if they need more than two. So pricing wise, it's better to get the QuizCom DataView Plus. Okay, so let's start. Let's see the Org Chart and see how it looks and how what you can do with it. So enough with the slides, and I'm going to my first example. Okay, so this is a modern page. Let me make it bigger a bit. Okay, this is a modern page, and I have here the Org Chart web part on this page. Let me show you a bit the functionality, and then we'll go over some of the settings of this web part. So for each employee, you see his card. Of course, if an employee has staff, you can expand the employee card and see his staff. If you want to see more details about the employee, of course you can zoom in or zoom out. You can move the chart around if you want to focus on some specific employee. You can print it and export it to an image. Now, if you want to see more details about the employee, you click the employee and you see his card. And of course, everything here is configurable. So you see, we configured it to see the name and the role and the phone number. And you got some actions. So here you see I have two actions. I have the call number, and if I click it, it will use my configured app for calling. In my example, I configured my Skype for Business to call someone. And also I have some configurable links here. So I configured the card to have some links to the user's LinkedIn and follow on Twitter and so on. I can add here whatever I want, including even JavaScript code, so I can add just more than just a static link. Now, if I want to see the hierarchy here, I can click here the view hierarchy icon, and now I can see more clearly the peers of this employee, the manager of this employee, and the staff. And of course, if I click any of the employees, I will be redirected to that employee card, and I can continue from here viewing the things that I want to see. Also, I can view the employee's profile, and this is again fully configurable. I configured the profile page to show these properties. Of course, I can also search. So you know what, let's hide some of the employees here, but before this I want to look for Jody. I see here that I have Jody, so let's hide this all together and let's look for Jody. And once it finds an employee, let me make it bigger, it shows the employee's manager and then the employee. So he found it. Now let's say I want to find, of course I can type names of employees here, but I can also see the employees. I can select. But the nice thing is that I can add some additional filters. So let's go to edit mode here, and let's see what we can do with the filter. So once I switch to edit mode, you see how this web part is actually built. This web part is actually built of controls. The first control that you see here on the top is the filter control, and it currently shows just a one filtering text box which searches the name of the employee. And then you see below it another control which is called Organization Chart 2. And if you click it, you see that I have many more controls that I can change, like other kind of organization chart, or I can show the raw data using a table or a list. I can use filter or groups, and menu bar I can add menus and so on. So I have here the filter above, and let's say I want to add some additional fields that I think users would like to filter by. So I can go here and click the plus icon, and let's say maybe filter by job title, and maybe also by I don't have a department here, maybe by manager. Okay, so I have two new filters, and of course I can remove them or add more. So let's go back to view mode. So I'm saving and closing my settings, and now I have three filters. So you know what, let's expand this node, and I see support engineers I have here. So let's look for support. Okay, so I found the support director, and below it it's all the support engineers, but I could do it differently. I can also pick one of the available roles here. So I can select one, and here I see it. Let's make it bigger. Okay, so this is the R&D director, but I can select several. I can click here, select multiple, and I want to see the HR director and the marketing director and the PR manager. So you can select several, or I can say all except, and it will show me all others. Okay, or I can just clear the filters, and same goes for managers. So one thing that you can see here is that you can configure your own filters the way you want. It's totally configurable. One more thing is that you see here the save button, which enables every end user to save his filter. So if I know that every time I would like to see a tree which is filtered by, let's say I want to see only Tracy's subtree, so let's select by manager Tracy. Okay, so now you see that Tracy is the root of this tree, and I want to save it. So from now on, every time that I will come to this page, even if I close the browser, it will remember these settings, and I will always see the tree that interests me. I belong to maybe to the support group, and I want to see only this subtree. Now if I do the same thing in design mode as administrator who configures this web part, let's say I have some different configuration here, and I click the save. In this case I get this pop-up that says, do you want to save this default filter for all the users or only for yourself? And this way I can have some default filters for all the users, beside of course the ones that created a filter, a private filter for themselves. So the private filter overrides the generic filter for everyone. Okay, so what else can I do in design mode? So we talked about the filter. Now when I'm in design mode, you might notice that I have this edit icon next to every user box here. So when I click it, I can do some changes in the user context, and I will show you can do of course the same changes in the entire tree scope. But let's say that I want only the manager, only the CEO here. Oh no, it's not the CEO. Let's clear the filter. So let's go back to the regular tree. Okay, here we are. And let's say that I want only the CEO to look different. So I can go here and say, okay, I want the theme only of the CEO to be a note, and the color should be, let's pick something which is really different, kind of orange maybe. Or something else. Sorry, let's do it again. Let's try it in someone else's tree. Yeah, okay, so let's make it orange and make it just a photo maybe. So what I'm trying to say is that you can configure a different look and feel per employee. This way you can emphasize the department managers, have them look differently, and so on. So this is per item configuration. But let's do some configurations on the entire org chart tree. So to configure this control, like any control, you see in design mode you have this configure control. When I click it, I see on the right all the configurable properties. So as you can see, I have these ones. Number of levels to open by default, it's 2. I can change it to 3. So, and let's click somewhere else. So in this case you'll see 3 open levels. I like to show only the 2 because 3 it's too much for me. You can change the zoom level. You can change the line type. So let's make it curved. And now you see the lines are different here. And you know what? Let's change the tree to render from left to right. So now you see it's rendered from left to right, okay? And let's do one more thing. Let's change the colors here. Let's keep the theme. You have all kind of themes, like I changed in the, so I can make it, let's say, you know what, soft rectangle with hexagon, which is, I don't like it too much, but it's just to see the difference. And let's change the colors to something else. Okay, this looks terrible, but just for the sake of this example. Now you got some other properties here, like show the zoom controls if you want to allow the user to zoom in and zoom out. Show search, you can have an inner search in this control. I don't like to show it. Show grid view enables you to the user to switch from tree to a grid view. Show the print controls and enable exporting. And then you got some control over the data that is displayed in each user box. As you see here, let's make it bigger a bit. You see that I see the role and then the phone number, and here I see the username. This is because it's configured to show these properties. So for example here, you see the name, you see here kind of a token. If I go to edit formula, I can put here not just static values but also dynamic values. It can be like it's now an item column, so in this case I'm showing the name of a user, but I can show any other property. So I can show the name and then also the phone number and then also any other property here. And if I want, I can also add any JavaScript code, or more accurately knockout code, to add some logic if I want. If you're a developer and you want to add some custom logic, you can do it here. And we got all these kind of snippets and also item snippets. All of these enable you to not just show the username, but you can add additional properties or add even logic to it. So same goes to other properties. You see we got the name, the position, and the phone. That's what you see in each user's box. Now you remember when I opened the box, you saw here all these kind of links, right? This is because it's configured to show the links, and it's completely configurable. You can change it by changing the card actions, and these actions are completely configurable. Okay. Okay, so this is just one example. Oh, and all of this was about the look and feel. Now, what about the data source? So when you want to update the data source, you click here on the left side on the Edit Web Part icon, and here you see the data source. So in this example, I'm connected to a SharePoint list. Okay, I can connect to an Excel file or to Graph API if you want to bring data from Azure Active Directory, for example. Okay, and in this case, because I'm connected to a SharePoint list, then I get to pick the list and the list view that I want to filter by. I can also filter the number of users to show if I want, and above all the UI customizations that I can do, changing the theme and the shapes and the colors, you can also, if you want, override all of that with your own CSS file. So this is really for advanced purposes that you want to, I don't know, implement your own very customized look and feel in addition to all the themes that we supply. And finally, we have here also the persistent cache. Cache is more needed not when you connect to a SharePoint list, but when you connect, for example, to Graph API, because connection to Azure Active Directory might take time, and if you have thousands of employees like I'm going to show you in a few minutes, this may take more time. So this is when using cache is more in place, is more needed. Now let's go to my second example. Okay, I'm going to discard my changes here and go back to my original look and feel, and I'm going to my second example now, which is again the org chart web part, but this time I'm using a different control of an org chart. You'll see it looks completely different, and I'm connecting to Azure Active Directory to bring 5,000 users. Okay, let me see. Okay, this took about 15 seconds, which is quite a long time. Again, it depends on many factors. It depends on your bandwidth, it depends on your caching status, it depends on the speed of Azure Active Directory. But this is a good example of real life scenario. I'm connected here to Azure and I'm bringing 5,000 employees. So what do we see here? So I have several filters that I configured, as you can see, and the tree looks a bit different. That's because I'm using a different control. I have some good conditional formatting here, so this employee only is colored differently. And also, if I click an employee, I see a bit of a different behavior here. I can call him by Skype, I can send him an email, or I can open his card. The card looks a bit different because I have these two actions that were added. I can have a Skype call, send an email here, same actions here. And again, I can see his peers, manager, and staff. Okay, this time I'm going to concentrate on the data source because I already showed you, and you can also show the chart on a full screen. One more thing that you can maybe notice here, that the first level is rendered horizontally, but if I expand this node, for example, it is rendered vertically. This is because I configured this web part, and you'll see it in a minute, that if an employee has more than 5 or 6 staff members, then they should be rendered vertically, because I don't want to have a horizontal scroll bar. So all of this is configurable. Okay, let's see the settings of this page. So I'm editing this page, and you see now it says org chart 1. Before, in the previous example, I used org chart 2, so it's a different controls. And by the way, we are adding more org chart controls, so it's very robust. It's like Lego. You're able to select any org chart control that you want, which has different features. It looks a bit different. It has different properties, just to have the one that you like most. So let's just show you first, before I show the data source, show you the properties of these org chart controls. So again, I have a default zoom and number of levels open by default, but this is the thing which is different: minimum number of employees to render vertically by default. So this is the property that because of it, the first level here is rendered horizontally because I have only 5 staff members in this level, but in other levels where I have more, they are rendered vertically. And all other settings here are quite the same. The more interesting part here is the data source. So I'm opening the web part settings, and this time you see that the data source is Graph API. And Graph API, as most of you know, enables you to connect to a huge variety of data from Microsoft Cloud. It can be Azure Active Directory or Exchange Online, or I can show you an example of connecting to OneDrive. So it's a huge hub that connects me to all Microsoft Cloud sources. So most of the users don't know how to use Graph API. It requires you to use their syntax. So what we prepared here is load graph examples. So once you click this button, you see all kind of examples, like I can show only my contacts in the tree or current user profile. But the first example, which is the most common one, is to bring Active Directory users. So once you click this one, it fills these fields that you need to fill. So graph path is /users, and then you select the columns that you want to bring from Azure Active Directory. So we brought the IT, the business phones, display name. Again, I didn't type it. I just used the examples. But if you need to type it, you need to open the Graph Explorer to see the columns that are available in your Azure Active Directory. And then you can provide also a filter statement. This enables you as admin to really pinpoint exactly what you want to bring from Azure Active Directory. Because Active Directory includes not just users, you have all kind of objects in Active Directory, so you need to filter them. So currently you see the filter is account enable, so we don't show disabled accounts, and also user type equals member. We don't show other type of users in the tree. But again, because we give you this text box, you can put here whatever filter you want, but you need to know the Graph API syntax, and we have here a link that shows you the guidelines from Microsoft. An advanced filter also enables you to do further filtering. Now again, I didn't have to write this because I'm using the load graph examples. Now moving on, I restricted the amount of users to 5,000, but that's what I have here, so it doesn't matter. And Graph API enables you to bring some expanded properties. These properties require a separate request. This is a bit technical, I know, but again, you don't have to worry about it, because once you click the button of load the graph examples, it populates it for you. But just for you to know, to bring the photo from Azure Active Directory, you needed a separate request. And if you're really interested what it's done behind the scenes, you click here and you see how the request is done. And again, we provide you this editor, which enables you to really, if you know Graph API, to do whatever you want here. You can, we give you full access to all the properties of Graph API. As before, you can use custom CSS to override our CSS. For example, I use my CSS here to override the color of this employee only. And you have the persistent cache. In the next settings pages, you map the properties from Active Directory to the properties of the chart. Like every user needs to have a name and department and position, and we need to know how you want to render them. For example, email is rendered as a text, while photo is rendered as a link or image. Okay, so we need to know how you want to render different properties in the chart. A third type of rendering here is persona card. Sometimes when organizations are bigger, like thousands of employees, and they don't see any point trying to browse through huge trees, sometimes they would rather using the persona card, which is more of a serial navigation. You start from top and you can navigate just by going with this forward and backward, or you open just the hierarchy, and then you can see the peers and the staff, and from there keep on going to the point where you want. Again, it's up to you, but this is another type of navigation that you can do. Just use the persona card to move serially between users. That's about it. What I'm gonna do now is go over questions